Thanks for coming in today, Lauren. Can you describe for me growing up with your family in the outer suburbs of Melbourne in the 70s?
I guess it was a strange upbringing when I look back on it, having a pop star for a father and a dancer for a mother. And I don't know, it was just such a beautiful, idyllic lifestyle because I grew up in the Dandenongs and it was a beautiful house. And Dad actually he wasn't working as much then, so he'd just stay at home during the week and he'd sing on weekends. And often he would just, if he was travelling, we'd go with him. And so it was just a really amazing time. And I look back at my childhood so fondly and I have so many great memories from that time. But, as I was growing up with kids and things like that, and I guess their parents would remember Dad and they'd say, oh, what's it like growing up with a famous father or whatever. It was just so normal. So it wasn't until I was growing up later that I realised when people would come up and ask him for his autograph or that sort of thing that I sort of realised why that was happening. But as I was growing up, it was just totally normal. Mm.
What do you think that taught you about life? What was your view on life at that time?
I think growing up, a lot of the things my parents taught me in those early years was just about loving yourself and that, your self-expression in a way. So I always felt like, I never had any expectation of what I might do or be or, I never felt any sort of pressure about anything like that. It was always just about, doing what I wanted to, the things that excited me and the things that I loved. So that was a really strong memory, and I guess that sort of carried right through my schooling life.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
What did I want to be when I grew up?
Providing you have.
Yeah, no. Well, when I was little, I wanted to just ride horses. I was obsessed with horses and with my cousin. But then as I always was into food and health and not so much fitness because I never played any competitive sport when I was growing up. But I don't know, there was something about the health industry that always sort of allured me, and I had seen a naturopath ever since I was a little kid, and we always had colds, we always had remedies and all sorts of home cures going on in the house, and so I think that there'd always been a spark to follow that career. So as I was finishing high school, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, but then suddenly I just got involved in this Taekwondo thing for a little while, so I put study on hold and embraced the athletic lifestyle and then went back to uni to finish naturopathy.
So when you were starting out in Taekwondo, what was it that first engaged you with the sport?
I think what first engaged me with Taekwondo was just the small steps of never-ending improvement. So it was just that do a little bit, you learn a little bit more, and then you can learn a little bit more on top of that and learn a little bit more on top of that. And it wasn't a lightning bolt of passion of this is my calling, this is what I'm meant to do, it was more, I just wanted to go back to learn that little bit more and get a little bit better. So that was like the embryonic stages of my enthusiasm for the martial art. But once I got into competition, then it changed, and that was like the pilot light was ignited, the fire in the belly, and that was all about self-improvement. So the thing about getting in the ring is that it brings up, it's quite complex what goes on. It's not just, there's so much strategy and you've got someone else trying to basically stuff up what you're trying to do and outsmart you as well. So there's all these things going on when you step in the ring.
When you were just getting into the sport, as we talked about before, was there anyone that you aspired to be like? Did you have a hero?
I've never really had heroes, yeah. So when I started out in the sport, it was just all about, I guess I was really naive in the sporting world because I'd never been involved in, a sporting lifestyle or, my school was an alternative school that didn't believe in competitive sport, so I never, had that sort of surroundings. And it was always about that, being that self-improvement. And then as I guess I started to watch competitions, there were people that I admired and who were at the top of their field, and so I'd watch them or I'd talk to them and ask them what they were doing and make notes and, make my own programs out of what everyone was doing. Whoever was successful, I'd sort of write down things and, make programs. And I guess when I look at, a hero or inspiration, there's many people, and I think anyone who is doing what excites them, what inspires them, what they love, and particularly seeing people that just they'll make things work, you know, and that just, I find that really inspiring. So it doesn't matter, you know, what field it is, whether it's in business or in sport, but, you know, or anything. And you see someone who, no matter what challenges they have, or they just know what they want and they're able to, you know, work things around, and it doesn't matter what the challenge is, but they have a mindset that will overcome that, or it's how they sort of deal with that that's really inspiring.
Yeah. So take me through Lauren's life after 13, before 18.
Yeah.
When, you know, you're starting to become more of a woman, and you are starting to also move into a professional sport where you are training a lot more than what you would normally have, trying to combine study with that, but also starting to get on the verge of having a social life outside of that, you know, those forums. How do you manage being a teenager with being a professional athlete or a semi-professional athlete at that point?
Well, I guess when I first started, because I didn't start Taekwondo till I was 14, and then, you know, it wasn't until I went in my first competition I was 16, so I probably didn't have that hunger for the actual sport until I was, you know, 17 or 18. So I'd already had a really active social life, and I had a really strong friendship group, and we went out all the time, and I was always, you know, I guess pushing the boundaries, and I loved, you know, being out and going out with my friends and doing crazy things. But I also loved school, so there was a few subjects that I absolutely loved. So I would spend my lunch times in the art room. I would, you know, the things that when I love something, I would just do it. I'd just find myself gravitating back and just working on those things. And I think that's maybe something that was in my nature, is that I quite like repetition too. So I like perfecting a skill and, you know, and doing it. And once you get good at it, then it, you know, you get so much more out of it. So I guess it wasn't until the end of, you know, coming to my schooling career, and, you know, year 11 and 12, and then that was harder because I was training at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd come to school and I'd be so tired. And my friends, it was so opposite to anything I'd been like in my whole life. So my friends were kind of like, what are you doing? Like, what's this martial art? What do you mean you fight on weekends? So I'd come to school on Monday and say, oh, I won the Victorian Championships on the weekend. You know, I'd never tell them that was coming up. I'd never invite them to come to a tournament. I never want my parents to come and watch.
Why? Why not?
I just wanted to be in my own space. I didn't want to worry about other people. I didn't want to think about them watching me. I just wanted to go and be in that moment. And then when I'd win, I'd think, oh, I wish everyone was here to celebrate. And, you know, oh, if they had seen that fight, it was great. But yeah, my friends were so surprised, and it was like, who is this person? What are you doing that for? And I guess the thing that was hardest for them was seeing the dieting, so dropping to weight divisions. And that was, unless you understand what goes on in weight division sports, it can be really hard, especially seeing a young girl who, you know, I was probably 54 kilos dropping into a 51 kilo class. Like, I was little anyway, and I was dropping this weight, and it just seemed, and at the beginning I didn't really know how to do that very well, so I was sort of starting to get a handle on my own metabolism and training and diet and, you know, the things I needed to do. So that was hard. They'd just say, please eat something, and, you know, you can't not eat, or you know. So that was pretty tough. And I guess for my best friend, she was always really upset about the thought of me being in the ring or getting hurt. Yeah.
As I imagine your parents would have been as well.
Yeah, they were, but I think my parents they were a bit more understanding, and I think with Mum being a dancer, I think she knew some of the, I guess, the hardships of being an athlete. And as I grew up, I always just thought, oh yeah, she's a dancer, wore a tutu, point shoes, whatever. But as I got older, I understood what that dedication meant for her as well.
So when do you consciously remember a time when you started to kind of tip over from being a student to an athlete? Like, when did you move over the 50% mark of being a student and an athlete into being, you know, calling yourself an athlete? Oh,
it took me a while before I called myself an athlete. But I think there was a turning point where just after I'd finished year 12 and I got into, you know, painting, and that's what I was going to do. And then I just had this opportunity where I'd won selection on the team to go to the World Championships, which was in Madison Square Gardens in '93 in New York. And I thought, oh, wow, I get to go, like, overseas. I was really, you know, I was pretty excited about that. So I thought, I can always go to uni, but I can't always be an athlete. So I thought, I'm going to give this a go. I'll just defer for a little bit. And I thought, I'll go to this tournament, and then while I'm over there, and we used to have to pay our own way at that point. I think we had a little bit of money towards it, but we paid all our own, you know, bought our own tracksuits and airfares and all that. So I thought, well, if I'm going to go there, I might as well stay. So I thought I'll just go indefinitely. So I fought at this championship and I, did really badly, but I was so amazed by the enormity of it, because also the Americans do things it's pretty flashy, and it's Madison Square Gardens, and they're going, the flyweight champion of the world. No other Taekwondo thing I'd ever seen was like that. Certainly wasn't like the Victorian Championships in Broadmeadows. So, but there's like all these courts and these massive screens, and it was just so huge. And I thought, I want to come back to this. This is what I like. This is awesome. And I fought this girl. I fought a girl from the States, and I just knew it was that same thing. I knew I could be that bit better. I knew I hadn't really done my best, and the overwhelm too. And I'd never been in an international competition. Here I am at the World Championships, and so I went on this sort of trip travelling around the world on my own. I turned up in Thailand. I remember I didn't even have a guidebook with me. I just rocked up at the airport. Didn't have anything booked. Yeah. I was just travelling around, and then I got word that there was another selection coming up for a tournament in Korea, and I had this real hunger to get back, and I think that was the turning point. And so that's what started when I went, okay, I'm going to go back to Australia and qualify, and then that was it. I was on the road.